Hurricane Rita is heading for landfall, and when she hits, the effects could be catastrophic. She's already claimed her first victims, 24 elderly evacuees killed when their bus caught fire. Texas officials say more than 5 million people could be affected. President Bush is on his way down here to check on the preparations. And grim news this evening for New Orleans. Heavy rainfall has already breached the city's damaged levees.
Hurricane Rita claimed its first victims before making landfall when this bus carrying elderly evacuees burst into flames on a gridlocked highway, grinding 20 miles of traffic to a complete halt. For the 2 million or so people fleeing the Gulf Coast, a precautionary departure has turned into a nightmare.
If the hurricane comes in at a particular angle and a particular location, being on the highway is a death trap.
People are facing sudden, alarming choices over petrol.
Waiting here 2.5 hours. You hear that, people? 2.5 hours.
No bread, no water, no ice, no batteries.
And over supplies. Some have already given up and gone back home.
Frustration, exhaustion, and confusion.
But every family at home is another potential burden to the rescue services, so the police are still going house to house in Galveston and Port Arthur.
I hate it. We've been on radio and television encouraging people to leave, but there's going to be people that are going to stay and suffer the consequences, unfortunately.
Probably one of the strongest storms in this short period of time I've seen.
Now Rita has shifted slightly to the east. Better news for Galveston, worse for the Louisiana coast. New Orleans is already getting the first rain. Authorities there say it won't take many inches to breach again the hastily rebuilt sea defenses around the city. And already in the 9th Ward, the levees are giving way and water is flooding back in. In New York, the traders are glued to the news updates as oil prices start to rise. With part of the industry still crippled by the last hurricane, the prospects for the 17 refineries on the Galveston coast are crucial.
I mean, if you look at Refinery Row, you know, they hit one end of Refinery Row, now the storms are going after the other. I mean, it's the worst possible nightmare scenario you could have for the world oil industry.
But this is serious work.
Also in New York, the Red Cross and other agencies are gathering personnel and supplies ready to respond immediately. Nobody, particularly the federal authorities, wants a whisper of the miserable relief effort that followed Katrina.
We're looking for 45 truckloads of water, 45 truckloads of ice, and 25 truckloads of food. And we are well within our realm to get all of those on the ground and in place to make sure that they're ready to distribute.
We're still looking at a monster Category 4 storm, and in fact,
America is transfixed by this storm. Katrina battered this country's self-confidence. The prospect of Rita, so close on its heels, is creating a palpable sense of fear. Fear because the only certainty is that Rita is big, dangerous, and unavoidable. Andrew Wilson, Sky News in Washington.
So Rita is on her way. Here's the very latest we know on her progress. She's now been downgraded very slightly to a Category 4 hurricane, closing in on Texas from the Gulf of Mexico. There's a major weather warning in place along the coastline. 20-foot storm surges could batter the shoreline in some areas. Expected early hours tomorrow morning, Saturday, Texas time. Texas officials expect 5.2 million people to be affected when the area bears the brunt of the storm when it hits land tomorrow. It's thought to be around 5 a.m. local time. Rain's already started falling in New Orleans, as you were hearing. Water now flowing over the levees there, raising fears of yet more flooding. And a number of oil refineries and platforms out in the Gulf have been evacuated and then shut down. Refugee centers are being set up near Huntsville and San Antonio and Dallas on higher ground, safer ground across Texas. The forecasters expect the worst to be over by Tuesday as Rita tracks inland, losing energy as she goes. Well, let's just explain a little of what we were talking about here. Houston, of course, where I am now, downtown Houston, is very much the heart of America's oil industry. A quarter of the nation's oil production comes from this Gulf of Mexico along the Texas coastline. Practically every rig and platform out in the Gulf has already been evacuated. The rigs themselves are now prepared. They can bob about and see out the storm, but the staff have been on the drilling platforms and the rigs and the oil refiners have all been evacuated now. So production has pretty much closed down, which means that it is hit right here in the very heart of oil land itself, and have raised scenes like this, where a petrol station forecourt was deserted an hour ago. It's now absolutely packed with people, none of them certain whether there's going to be any oil here, any fuel for their cars. They're queuing in the hope. Some of them heard a rumour on a radio that this station was going to get a tanker load today, but basically just about every filling station in the whole of the Houston area seems to be closed at the moment, and many of those, of course, evacuating out of the city and to the north. And we're talking about 2.5 million people, we believe, have evacuated or are in the process of evacuating from this whole Texas coastal region around Houston. A lot of them have been left on the freeways, highways and interstates without any petrol at all. And that's the next big problem for the authorities, to try and get petrol to them so they can start up and get clear before the storm hits in about 17 or 18 hours for now. In the meantime, the people here are sitting calmly in their cars, waiting in the hope that they can get fuel either to take them out of town or to at least be prepared to hunker down in town here and make a run for it if they have to. Although a lot of people in Houston itself believe that the storm may not hit the city quite as badly as was thought a few hours ago, and that it's more likely to hit between where we are and David Bowden, our correspondent in Port Arthur, who we'll be talking to later on. In other words, between Houston, along the Texas coast, and round towards poor old Louisiana again and New Orleans, which looks like it's going to get another pasting from another hurricane. Well, Rita's already the third most powerful storm ever recorded in the North Atlantic. That's out to sea, of course, and at her peak she was classified as a Category 5 hurricane. The only other storm to reach the same level this year was Hurricane Katrina, and some experts are blaming the ferocity of these storms on global warming and say that this is just the beginning.
Is nature taking its course, or is human nature the cause of raging changes to the weather? Before Rita, there was Katrina. This season there have been 17 named storms. That's not unusual. What is how intense those storms have become. Over the last 3 decades, the biggest hurricanes, cyclones and typhoons have got stronger, gaining momentum from warmer seas. Which is why some scientists put it down to global warming.
We certainly know from our models that under a warming world you would expect to see more powerful hurricanes more often, and that's what we can see in the future. These sorts of events, Rita and Katrina, happening more often.
But it suits George W. to cast doubts on claims that global warming is a real phenomenon, because that would require major changes to the way oil-rich America does business. And history is on their side. Atlantic hurricanes follow decades-long cycles. The seasons were particularly intense between the 1940s and the 1960s. Then they went through a relatively mild stage until 1994, picking up strength again from 1995. Some experts say this phase could last another 10 to 20 years, which means southern states of America may suffer more of the same until 2015. The debate is almost as cyclical as the weather systems everyone's trying to understand, which leaves the United States with a choice. They could either signal willing to cut greenhouse gases at the global climate talks in November, or ride out the storms. Juliet Errington, Sky News.
Well, some excitement here in the last couple of minutes. We've just seen a load of army trucks going up the road with police escorts heading out west from downtown Houston. It looked like they were all petrol containers, so it looks like what's happening is what we were being told by the authorities, that they're hoping to get emergency supplies of fuel out to all these evacuating motorists who've now broken down or run out of fuel on the interstates and the highways leading out of Houston up to the safer ground to the north and to the west of Texas. That was just a small convoy that whizzed by us in the last few minutes. In the meantime, all the people here are hoping for a tanker load at this particular station in the hope that they can fill up and either get out of town or hunker down somewhere in Houston. Of course, the The worst problem at the moment appears to be New Orleans in the on the front edge of the storm, where yet again this huge hurricane, now Category 4, Rita, is pushing storm water ahead of it. You get this sort of storm surge effect where the water builds up on the front edge, whipped up by the winds, the rotating anti-clockwise winds in front of this huge storm front, and are pushing the tides up and over the levees which they were hurriedly trying to rebuild in New Orleans, and it looks like flooding has started all over again there. Yet again, another problem. Just going to take you over here. See fire tenders now starting to race out of town. They're all suited up. I see they've got their masks on. We're not sure what this is about, but there's been a lot of police and emergency fire and ambulance activity in the last few hours as they're trying to get out to people who are stranded. Of course, there was the terrible bus tragedy on the road between Houston, where we are, and Dallas, where a coachload of old people who are in a home just down the road from where we are here in Houston were being taken to safety. Sadly, the bus exploded. Nobody's quite sure what caused the fire. Some of their oxygen cylinders are believed to have become ignited by the fire, causing a tragedy that has claimed 24 deaths. So sadly, already victims of the storm long before it's even reached landfall. More from Houston in a while. In the meantime, let's catch up with the rest of the news.
Jeremy, thanks so much indeed, live there from Houston. And to the rest of the news now, and a man who broke into a secure area at Manchester Airport today was shot by police armed with a taser gun.
Officers were called in after the man forced his way past security on the airfield perimeter. He was then arrested under the Terrorism Act.
The security breach will have sent a chill down the spines of passengers and particularly airport staff. But tonight there was some relief that the intruder did not at least manage to reach an aircraft.
We've had a very quick debrief on what happened. Could we do things differently? We're satisfied that the security worked. Unless we have people standing shoulder to shoulder around a perimeter fence the size of an airport, you're always at risk of these things happening.
The man was arrested at 8:30 a.m. after evading guards at a security checkpoint. In an airside area known as Stand 26, he was disabled with a taser gun following the struggle. An army bomb disposal team was called to deal with what's believed to have been a piece of luggage.
I saw a little robot going out towards the package, and then there was a controlled explosion and it blew the package to bits, and then the robot retreated, and then 2 bomb disposal officers went out and had a look at it.
Much of the airport was sealed off, with passengers initially being told not to turn up. Police officers directed traffic away from the airport, leading to severe congestion and some confusion.
OK, folks, I'm afraid we can't come any closer. I know it's raining.
Everyone's a bit phased by it all. And we've been shuffled in and shuffled out and shuffled in and shuffled out.
Tonight, the airport was back to normal amid some relief that this incident could have been much worse. But relief or not, security is clearly designed to stop unauthorised access of this nature. And particularly in the current climate, the incident will have sounded alarm bells and raised questions about how a similar breach can be prevented in future. Mike McCarthy, Sky News, Manchester Airport.
Well, Mike McCarthy joins us now live from Manchester Airport. And Mike, arrested first under the Terrorism Act, that subsequently changed to the Mental Health Act. But nonetheless, this is being taken seriously, is it?
It is indeed. The airport managing director, John Spooner, has said tonight that in his view, this was a model example of how the airport security system should have worked. The man was followed very closely on CCTV. He was pursued rapidly by the police and stopped long before he managed to reach an aircraft. Nevertheless, in the words of some of the passengers that we've been speaking to tonight, when you go to the trouble of getting all the right documentation, you go through all the security checks, you put your luggage through the X-ray, it's a little bit worrying, to say the least, that somebody was able to breach security, the perimeter fence here, with relative ease.
Mike McCarthy, live for us at Manchester Airport. Thank you.
A man accused of trying to blow up a tube train at Shepherd's Bush has been remanded in custody. Hussein Osman appeared before Bow Street Magistrates Court charged with attempted murder. He's due to appear at the Old Bailey on December the 8th.
The widow of the King's Cross suicide bomber says her husband's mind was poisoned by visits to radical mosques. Speaking publicly for the first time, Samantha Luthwaite said the trips transformed Jermaine Lindsay from a peaceful man into someone she didn't recognise. Lindsay blew himself up on a Piccadilly line train, killing 26 people on the 7th of July.
And a British Muslim convert has been jailed for 15 years after being convicted of possessing terrorist items. Andrew Rowe was found guilty of having instructions on how to fire mortar bombs and also notes written in a secret code. Following the sentencing, the judge criticised the government, claiming it should consider life sentences for similar offences. Well, our crime correspondent Martin Brunt, live for us now at the Old Bailey. Martin, how serious a threat was this man?
Well, Rowe himself said that this was nothing to do with terror and the things he had were for the legitimate defence of Muslim civilians in some areas of conflict. And in fact, he admitted fighting on their behalf in Bosnia during the 90s. But the judge said he believed that at the time of Rowe's arrest in 2003, he was on the verge of committing a terrorist act. And this is what the head of the anti-terrorist branch had to say about Andrew Rowe.
Andrew Rowe is a man capable of extreme violence. He's been trained in the use of violence. We know he's used violence in various parts of the world, and it's clear from the evidence that was placed before the court that he intended to use violence in the future. We don't know where he intended to attack, we don't know when he intended to attack, but there's no doubt at all that he did intend to launch an attack against the public at some point.
Martin, many thanks for now.
You're watching Live at 5. The top stories now, and Texas officials say more than 5 million people could be affected by Hurricane Rita. 24 elderly evacuees died in Dallas after a fire on their bus as they tried to escape the storm. And in New Orleans, water has already breached at least one of the levees, flooding part of the city.
Police have used a taser gun to arrest a man after he broke into a secure area at Manchester Airport. Officers were called in after the man forced his way past security on the airfield perimeter.
And a British Muslim convert has been jailed for 15 years after being convicted of possessing terrorist items. Andrew Rowe was found guilty of having instructions on how to fire mortar bombs and notes written in a secret code.
Look at City News. FTSE closed the week up 27 points at 54.13, cheered by Enterprise Inns and 3i. Oil stocks fell back on hopes that Katrina might miss Texas refineries. Dow Jones down 14 at the moment at 10,407, and the Nasdaq down almost a point at 2,109.
Just to bring you a bit more news, business news in fact, from Morrison's, the supermarket chain. We're just hearing they are going to close 3 depots with the loss of 2,500 jobs. So some very bad news for some Morrison's employees. 2,500 jobs to be lost with the closure of 3 depots. That news just being confirmed to us by Morrison's in the last few minutes.
In the meantime, let's catch up with the sport. Here's Jackie.
Thank you very much indeed. Great Britain will go into the second day of their Davis Cup World Group qualifier, trailing Switzerland 2-0 after defeat for both Andy Murray and Alan Mackin. They must now win all 3 of the weekend's remaining rubbers if they're to take Switzerland's place amongst the world top 16 nations.
This was the Jeremy Bates plan: write off the 2 rubbers against Federer and win the other 3. That made Alan Mackin the sacrificial lamb, and slaughter duly followed. 262 places split Mackin and the world number 1, but light years separated the 2 men only a few yards apart across the net. For Mackin, it was a major triumph, just winning a couple of games in the 3rd. The result was beyond doubt. It took only an hour and a quarter and had the cowbells clanging early. With Rosetsky rested, the gamble relied on Andrew Murray levelling the tie. He had his chance in a second set tie-break to level the match at 1-1 with some inspired tennis. But Stanislas Wawrinka, ranked well ahead of the teenager in the world, dished out a lesson in holding your nerve to go 2 sets up. Murray, in his first Davis Cup singles, led early in the 3rd, but again surrendered the advantage. The Swiss rolled on to victory, and that should now become a formality with Federer still to play his second singles. Chris Scudder, Sky News.
Manchester United's injury worries go from bad to worse. Gary Neville has been ruled out for 6 weeks after having an operation on the groin he injured last month. He joins Roy Keane and Gabi Ainsay on the injury list there. Real Madrid coach Wanderlei Luxemburgo says Jonathan Woodgate is a good player and that he's not worried about his disastrous debut last night. Woodgate, playing for the first time in 13 months since his move to Spain because of injury, said he was happy to have made his comeback, but he scored an own goal in their match with Athletic Bilbao. And he was later sent off in front of the home fans at the Bernabeu after receiving a second yellow card. The Real fans cheered Woodgate as he walked off, but he admits it was a night he'll remember for all the wrong reasons.
Happy that I played my first game. In shock after I got sent off. When I scored the own goal, I just couldn't believe it. I was thinking, when's it going to change, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we won 3-1, so that's all that matters for me.
On day 2 of the Sevi Trophy, the Great Britain and Ireland team have been hitting back from a 4-1 deficit to the Europeans. They made a very good start in the full balls. Paul Casey and David Howell won their match against Miguel Angel Jimenez and Jose Maria Olazabal 5-4. Also victorious were the Irish pairing of Paul McGinley and Padraig Harrington. They beat Nicholas Fast and Peter Hansen 2-1 to take that match 4-3. And that was soon followed by a win for Poulter and Doherty, and that tied the match at 4-4. But then Team Europe edged back in front thanks to a victory for Thomas Bjorn and Henrik Stenson. They beat Colin Montgomery and McDowell to go 5-4 up. And the final match was also won by the Europeans, Lefebvre and Canonica, leaving the score at 6-4 going into day 3. The teams have been practicing at Brands Hatch for the first A1 Grand Prix. Qualifying is tomorrow with the race on Sunday. It's a new concept where the teams compete as nations rather than individual manufacturers. Like Formula 1, the drivers all race in the same type of car, making the skill and tactics of the teams the key factors. There's also 2 races at the meeting. There's a short sprint race of 50 miles, followed by a longer feature race of 150 miles. At Brands Hatch is the man behind it all, Sheikh Maktoum. He's with Georgie Thompson.
Yeah. The first World Cup of motorsport has finally arrived here at Brands Hatch. Preparations now well underway for what should be a pretty exciting race weekend. I'm here with the man responsible for it all, Sheikh Maktoum. Are you impressed by what you've seen so far this morning?
Yes, it's been very encouraging. It's been very positive. No big incidents to date, and it's been exciting. And to see this amount of people show up for the Friday practice, I think Sunday will be swamped.
How big a weekend is this for you, professionally and personally?
Well, professionally, it's been monumental. I've been here for the last week, making sure everything's fine. Personally, I'll let you know after Sunday.
Now, come Sunday, we all want a Team GB driver standing on that podium in first position. What are your hopes for the weekend?
Well, my hope is the best team. I hope the best team will win. It'll be very positive if Team GBR Stones gets a very good performance on track. But again, it's anyone's guess. It's interchangeable between the top 10.
You designed the car, you road tested it in Dubai. I'm surprised you don't fancy a drive today.
Well, it's my business. This is a day in the office. I'll go have some fun some other time.
Have a fantastic weekend. Thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you.
Well, the Super League playoffs get underway tonight. Bradford taking on the London Broncos at Odsal in the first elimination match. The winners will meet Warrington or Hull next weekend in the second round, and the losers are out. That is all sport for now.
Jackie, thank you very much indeed. See you later on. You're watching Live at 5, still to come. New Orleans begins to flood again as Hurricane Rita closes in on America's Gulf Coast. We'll be there live in just a moment.
And seeing Real red, a dodgy debut for Jonathan Woodgate.
Miles has learned that nobody comes whether he cries or not. A door, a table, a fist. His abuser says he'll come and get Tom if he does. Sometimes we need to open our eyes to the suffering that's all around us and work together to stop it. Please pledge just £2 a month to the NSPCC and be there for children in desperate need. Please, open your eyes and your heart. Call the NSPCC now on 0800 80 20 20 and give £2 a month or whatever you can. Together, we can help stop cruelty to children, full stop. Let us start now.
You see this? This means more to the office than you. And yet, do you hear any complaints when I do this?
Get a DVD of one of Kevin Spacey's most mesmerizing performances.
You miserable little crybaby!
Swimming with Sharks. A savage comedy about Hollywood power struggles. Free, only with this Saturday's Independent.
Please, pledge just £2 a month to the NSPCC by calling 0800 80 20 20.
Collect vouchers at Tesco, and your school or club can get new sports equipment. Not to mention the very best coaching. And if they're really lucky, they could win some very expensive trainers for the afternoon. Tesco. Every little helps.
The weather, in association with Qatar Airways, your 5-star airline.
Good evening. Well, this is the satellite picture over Europe at the moment. Now, things are mainly very settled across most of Europe. The unsettled weather is really over us. You can see this band of rain which was working its way eastwards through the day, and out in the Atlantic here, another band of rain, and that's going to be the look of things really. Bands of rain washing across Britain and Ireland much of the time. But mainly through, you can see through Europe, lots of clear skies here. There's still some unsettled weather though out to the east, giving some heavy downpours there. Now if we take a look at the forecast for Saturday, you can see that the sunshine really is continuing, particularly these eastern areas bathed in sunshine here. There will be a little bit more in the way of cloud on Saturday through these central parts, through Germany and into France as well, and the showers out in the east are continuing as well. Then we see more sunshine again through Spain and Portugal, so things very nice here. But look at the wet weather that's going to push in on Saturday over Ireland, and that's that band of rain that I showed you earlier on the satellite. Now this evening for us today, that rain that's been working its way across the country will all but have cleared by this evening. So you can see it here, this massive cloud working very quickly eastwards, and by this evening pushing off out into the sea. So most of the wet weather's gone and we're looking at a very dry and calm night. The clear skies there are going to make way for a very frosty night as well. So it's going to be a chilly start to Saturday for most places. The only place that won't be chilly really is Ireland, and that's just because you've got this band of rain which is about to head in. So a cold start to the day, and then things will start to improve. Plenty of good sunny spells, although some of it will be hazy sunshine, but that should last throughout the day. So most of Scotland, England and Wales looking at having a very good day indeed. It's just Ireland that's going to be absolutely soaked, I'm afraid, with this weather, which again is making its way eastwards, making a journey eastwards. So that's the look of things then. Now on Sunday, a bit unsettled, some showers popping up, but some good sunny spells as well. A little bit windy though up to the north and the west, and come Monday, yet another band of rain out in the west.
The weather, in association with Qatar Airways, your 5-star airline.
You're watching Live at 5, the top stories this evening, and Texas officials say more than 5 million people could be affected by Hurricane Rita. 24 elderly evacuees died near Dallas after a fire on their bus as they tried to escape the storm. And in New Orleans, water has already breached at least one of the levees. These are the live pictures. You can see a waterfall practically going over about 30 feet stretch there, flooding part of the city once again, one of the lowest lying areas.
Police have used a taser gun to arrest a man who broke into a secure area at Manchester Airport. Officers were called in after the man forced his way past security on the airfield perimeter.
And a British Muslim convert has been jailed for 15 years after being convicted of possessing terrorist items. Andrew Rowe was found guilty of having instructions on how to fire mortar bombs and notes written in a secret code.
Now, after Rita's slight change of track, forecasters say the residents of Houston in Texas could be spared the full force of the storm.
But of course that means other areas are now at high risk. Sky's David Bowden has travelled down to Port Arthur, which could now be facing a direct hit. He joins us live right now, and nervous times no doubt for Port Arthur, David.
Nervous times and wet and windy times. Anna, it's just started to rain. Rita definitely on her way now. And if Richie just pans the camera around, you look at the waterway, very choppy now. When we arrived here 5 or 6 hours ago, that was flat calm, the proverbial mill pond. So she's getting closer and closer. And the reason that Port Arthur is scared is because we're standing on one of these levees. 3, of course, have broken in New Orleans. This one intact, but not very high. It's only 15 or so feet high. We're expecting a storm surge of maybe 20, 25 feet. So what happens when that comes along? Well, if we look the other side of this levee, you will see we've got Port Arthur itself, the city, with all the government buildings, all the houses. You can maybe make out 1 or 2 mail vans over there. That will disappear under several feet of water. The problem is that the sea wall that's meant to keep the water out is a curved horseshoe shape. So once the water's in, it can't get out again unless it's pumped out, and that will take some time. And just look how brave the people are who own these shrimping vessels just down here behind us. They have not moved today. It's too late for them to go now. What kind of a battering are they going to get when Rita really does arrive here with winds of anything from 100 or so miles an hour upwards?
And the part of the problem with Rita, David, is that it's very slow moving, isn't it? Southeast Texas, I understand, is expected to suffer hurricane force winds for at least 16 hours.
That's right. It's moving at maybe 9 miles an hour. They've already shifted back the time it was due to make landfall from about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning here to 5 or 6 o'clock local time. That means, of course, that people have a bit more time to get prepared, a bit more time to get out of here if they've left it late. But as you say, it also means that those who are hunkering down are going to have to sit tight for a lot longer than if this was just whizzing through and disappearing up country, and of course as it does so, losing steam. It's going to be here for quite a while. The people that have stayed here obviously have to get their supplies in, find some stairwell in their house that is going to be secure, because it's going to be very, very windy, very wet. But the real big factor, of course, this storm surge that could put several feet of water right into the city itself.
Yeah, tell us a bit about Port Arthur, a city of about, what, 60,000 people roughly, is it?
Yes, I haven't counted them all, obviously, but there are very few of them left, I can tell you. When we drove in here, a lot of fairly grand houses are boarded up, but nevertheless, they're going to be exposed to the full force of this wind and weather when it comes. This town is built on oil. 11% of all America's gasoline, petrol to you and me, is processed in the refineries just down towards the coast from here away, and 30% of all the jet fuel. So if that gets hit really hard, if there's any major damage down there, that will have a knock-on effect on fuel prices, which of course have a knock-on effect on pretty much everything else. So you can see just how important Port Arthur is to the whole of the infrastructure, not just only of this part of Texas, but the whole United States.
Well, David, it could get a direct hit, so take care. Thanks very much indeed.
Well, in New Orleans, Hurricane Rita has been described as the city's worst nightmare come true.
Water has already breached at least one of the levees, flooding the city's 9th ward.
Let's go live now to New Orleans and the CBS News correspondent Bianca Solorzano. Bianca, good afternoon to you. The situation seems to be changing by the minute. What's the latest you can tell us?
Well, good afternoon, Chris. Yeah, the situation here, as you mentioned, it was one of the worst fears. Unfortunately, it's happened. That levee in the 9th ward, which is very low-lying, hard hit by Hurricane Katrina. All the work that was done there just couldn't hold up to this rain that's arriving before Hurricane Rita. As you said, the levee there, it just couldn't hold. There are 3 major holes right now. There's about a 30-foot wide waterfall gushing through. The water is waist deep. It's rising about 3 inches per minute. So the Army Corps of Engineers, they tried to do their best, but just couldn't hold. So right now it's a waiting game, seeing what other levees will be able to make it through the water that Rita is going to bring.
Bianca, even though there's not much they really can do, as you say, do you get the sense that people are better prepared than they were for Katrina?
Well, what's good this time around is that a lot of people hadn't even come back yet. So you have the people out of here. They're out of the 9th Ward. Yes, there are some residents in the French Quarter. We've been told a number, about 500 diehards that have said, hey, you know, I made it through. I'm going to stick around again. But what's good this time is that so many people are already out. You're seeing more military, police, media here, and not the residents. So you won't have the worry if more levees don't hold.
Bianca, is it the rain that actually is the big problem, or the sort of storm surge, the water that's caught up in a storm?
It's really a combination, Chris. The prediction for rain here in New Orleans is up to 5 inches, and some of the levees can hold up to 6. So you have a very small room for margin of error there. As far as the storm surge, some of the levees can hold maybe 3 to 5 feet, but you just have to wait and see how is this hurricane going to play out, how much water is New Orleans going to get, and then you'll see which levees make it through or not.
So what's the timetable then for Rita as far as New Orleans is concerned?
Same kind of timetable. We're looking at seeing the most rain and the most wind here coming very late tonight, early into tomorrow morning.
I hate to sort of tempt fate, but there's still weeks and weeks of the hurricane season to go.
I know. It's so hard to think about that. Think about New Orleans. They went through so much. The city was 80% flooded, and then with the pumps that got working again and more brought in and the work from the Army Corps of Engineers, they got this place dried out. It was only 10% flooded, and now, unfortunately, they're going to have to go back to work. It's just a very frustrating situation for New Orleans. Hopefully, Rita will pass, and maybe the rest of the season will be quiet, but again, you never know.
Bianca, this may not be the right time for this question, but are people asking about the future of New Orleans, given the damage we're looking at the moment?
After Katrina came through, so many people said they were confident this city would be rebuilt. It would get back, if not where it was, better than where it was. President Bush had said that also when he visited here several times in the last couple of weeks. Right now, the residents that we've heard from, they say, you know, we're going to get through this again. Yes, it's frustrating, but they expect that New Orleans will be dried out and rebuilt one day.
Bianca Solorzano from CBS, as always, thanks for your time.
Welcome.
We'll keep you abreast with the very latest on Rita, of course, and also still to come here on Live at 5. Bushfighters, the Kalahari warriors, desperately trying to save their land. We'll have a special report.
Inside tomorrow's Daily Express, get Volume 1 of Legends, a double CD featuring classic performances from Rod Stewart, Engelbert Humperdinck and more. Plus, your chance to win a life of luxury. All this starting in tomorrow's Daily Express and continuing in Sunday's Sunday Express.
Express delivery.
They're big. They're bad.
That's awesome, man.
They're a fightin'...
You suck!
...feudin' family.
Yeah! That looks awesome.
Oh, yes. And they build some rather tasty bikes. It's back. American Chopper. Only on Discovery Channel. Awesome.
Wherever you are, whoever you are, you can connect to the power of learning with the Open University. Whatever you want to study, to whatever level, at whatever time you choose, we're open. Connect to the power of learning now. Call the Open University today on 0870 900 0306 for your free brochure. That's 0870 900 0306 or visit our website.
I saw it this morning at 8, coming out of town.
I saw it too this morning at 8. I turned around and it was gone.
I saw it southwest from here at the lake. At 8, it disappeared in the fog.
Looks like there's more than one out there.
The new Seat Leon.
for those who believe in driving.
Curious? Then follow me. Sky Sports unveils a whole new concept, A1 Grand Prix. With 25 nations on the starting grid, it's country versus country. In identical cars, same tyres, same engines. It'll be the ultimate test for the driver.
A1 Grand Prix, live from Brands Hatch, starts this weekend on Sky Sports.
Were forced back down to earth today.
Yes, the party could be forced to give back a donation worth almost £2.5 million after it was claimed that it might have broken electoral law. Let's go live to Westminster and speak to Sky's Graham Leach. Graham, what's it all about?
Well, this all centres on a company based in Switzerland, run by a Swiss-based financier, Michael Brown, based in the quaint Swiss town of Zug, famous, we're told, for making fruitcake. Well, this whole row threatens to make the Lib Dems look as though they're one sultana short of a fruitcake, because there's a clearly hue and cry going on as to how on earth this vast amount of money, this vast donation, 2.5 million almost, was taken on board, accepted by the Lib Dems, with no real inquiry, it seems, as to where the money was coming from. Now, the Lib Dems are putting the best possible face on this today, but some voices within the party are admitting that they've scored a huge own goal here. Others are saying or implying the money was taken in good faith, and that the election watchdog body, which is looking into all of this, will clear them at the end of the day. This was the reaction of the Lib Dem president, Simon Hughes.
I'm told, and I believe it to be the case, that all the relevant people in the party who have the responsibility for these things did the checks, took advice, believed it was perfectly legal, and on that basis accepted it like all other donations. The Electoral Commission, in the end of the day, will judge.
Graham, this is certainly embarrassing for the party, and it's made even worse by some of the comments from the man who actually gave the money.
That's right. This comes at the end of a topsy-turvy week for the Lib Dems. They had a difficult party conference, the leadership being defeated on one or two key issues, and of course all the rumours about Charles Kennedy's leadership being under threat. He ended the week on a high note, delivering what many regarded as one of the best, if not the best, speeches of his leadership. And now this, and perhaps, as you indicate, the most damaging remark of all, coming from Michael Brown, the financier in question, saying to the Lib Dems, how did you let my donation be brought into this legal quagmire, but also saying, you know, if this is how they handle my donation, in effect, God help them if they ever come to run the economy.
Graham, many thanks.
You're watching Live at 5. Top stories now, and officials in Texas say more than 5 million people could be affected by Hurricane Rita. 24 elderly evacuees died in Dallas after a fire on their bus as they tried to escape the storm. And in New Orleans, water has already breached at least one of the levees, as you can see from these live pictures, flooding part of the city known as the Ninth Ward. It's one of the lowest lying areas in New Orleans. One of the National Guardsmen there saying their worst fears have already come true.
Police have used a taser gun to arrest a man after he broke into a secure area at Manchester Airport. Officers were called in after the man forced his way past security on the airfield perimeter.
And a British Muslim convert has been jailed for 15 years after being convicted of possessing terrorist items. Andrew Rowe was found guilty of having instructions on how to fire mortar bombs and notes written in a secret code.
Don't forget, those headlines just one of the 8 screens that you can find on Sky News Active. All screens available in full size if you like. Just push the red button on your digital remote control.
Well, they are the last remnants of the hunter-gatherers that roamed the African plains, but the Bushmen of the Kalahari are now under threat.
Yes, they're having to make a final stand against a government that wants them removed from their ancestral land. Sky's David Chater reports now from Botswana.
These are the Bushmen that tourists see in Botswana, acting the hunter-gatherers searching the Kalahari for food, herbs and water. They're paid to mimic a lifestyle most of them have already lost, displaying skills that have failed to ensure their survival in a modern world that's proved far harsher than their desert homeland. The Bushmen could once be numbered in their millions. Now there are only 100,000 of them left in southern Africa, half of those here in Botswana. But only 240 of them are left in their traditional homeland in the central Kalahari Game Reserve, and they're now making a last stand against attempts to evict them. These men were arrested on the reserve earlier this week. They told me the police and wildlife wardens were firing rifles over their heads throughout the night, preventing them from searching for food and water. The situation is now desperate.
I'm sure that people are going to die soon of what is happening.
The thousands already evicted have been put in resettlement camps. They have schools, running water and food trucked in by the government. But this is an alien environment that has robbed them of their dignity. HIV, AIDS and prostitution is now rife, and men pass along idle hours in self-destructive drinking bouts. In their culture, if they cannot kill game, they are not men.
If they shoot us, they can shoot us. That's no problem. I can die, no problem. No problem, because this is my country.
And the life is difficult because people are not used to living the way they are living now.
The elders can see with their own eyes what is happening around them. Calls for protest are growing, and demands to go to the aid of those still holding out in the reserve.
They don't have access to water, they are not allowed to do any hunting, they've got nothing to eat. So they are been made in a very bad situation. That is a punishment, in which, to my knowledge, which I see the government is doing, so that people have to give up and go outside the camps.
It seems the sun is about to set on an ancient way of life in the Kalahari. The Bushmen's dances and rituals will only lose their power if they lose their land. They've been bankrupted fighting for it in the courts. Now they're appealing to the world. The Kalahari will soon be left to diamond prospectors and big game tourists. After 30,000 years, its most fascinating, intriguing and intelligent species will have been driven from here by gunpoint. David Chater, Sky News, the Kalahari Desert.
Just a quick update on Hurricane Rita. We're hearing from the AP news agency that dozens of blocks in New Orleans are now underwater after one of the patched up levees was breached. Their worst nightmares coming true at the moment. These are live pictures coming out of New Orleans.
Yeah, the levees, we're told, are built to hold about 7 feet of water. New Orleans water is now standing at 7.5 feet high, so they've clearly got problems once again. The combination of the waves and the storm surges that come with the wind and the rain that's falling steadily on the city right now.
Stay with us here on Live at 5. Still to come this evening, dodgy debuts. Why Jonathan Woodgate will want to forget his first game for Real Madrid.
It was as if a huge stone was dropped into the lake that day, and 4,400 ripples were cast out into time.
He sent us back to save you.
From the past. From the future. From yourselves.
The new series of 4,400 starts Tuesday, 8 o'clock, Sky 1.
Get ready for Citroen's best ever value. The new C4 from just $9,595. And the Zara Picasso from just $9,995. Now both available with typical 0% APR with 35% deposit. Citroen, pushing value to the limit.
A lot of people seem to be getting rather overexcited about the Norwich Union Direct Summer Extravaganza. Up to 25% off online car insurance quotes until September 30th. Visit Norwich Union Direct on www.quotemehappy.com before September 30th and let us quote you happy.
4-in-1 is the first dishwasher tab from Finish to combine a powerful detergent, salt, rinse aid and glass protector action all in one tab. This gives you the 10 power actions essential for truly brilliant results, time after time. Finish 4 in 1. One tab, 10 power actions.
You see this? This means more to the office than you. And yet, do you hear any complaints when I do this?
Get a DVD of one of Kevin Spacey's most mesmerizing performances.
You miserable little crybaby!
Swimming with Sharks. A savage comedy about Hollywood power struggles. Free, only with this Saturday's Independent.
Most of us are asleep most of the time. Even when we shop, we're sleep shopping. Filling your trolleys with exactly the same things, week in, week out. There's a million meals to choose from, so why eat the same ones again and again? Remember the first time you ever tasted honey? Wouldn't it be great to taste something new for the first time every week? Use your imagination. Use my imagination. Use their imagination. Be adventurous! We're not talking rocket science. Next time you go to Sainsbury's, buy a nutmeg, grate it over your bolognese. See how easy it is? Go on, try something new today.
Now, after 18 months of injury problems, Jonathan Woodgate's first game for the world's most glamorous football team was always going to be memorable.
Yeah, I can't watch this. The defender certainly didn't disappoint, providing Real Madrid fans with a game they and he will never forget. Unfortunately for him, though, it was for all the wrong reasons. Sky's Ashish Joshi takes a look.
It's a goal any striker in the world would love to score. But the problem is Jonathan Woodgate's a defender, and he's just put the ball in the back of his own net. And it got worse. What should have been a dream debut for the Real Madrid player soon turned into a nightmare. After spending just 65 minutes on the pitch, the former Newcastle man was sent off. Not quite the sort of introduction you'd want after spending 17 months out of the team with a thigh injury.
It was a tremendous header, there's no question about that. I mean, you know, if he tried to do that, 99 times out of 100 he couldn't.
But football's full of farcical fables. Southampton manager Graham Souness was conned into signing a player he thought was a cousin of Liberian legend George Weah. But after sending out the untried and certainly not tested Ali Deer for his debut against Leeds, Souness soon realised the player wasn't going to win the Golden Boot with his feet of clay. Deer was substituted after just 10 minutes, and Weah had never heard of his imposter cousin, and nobody else has since. But often it's not the manager's fault. The pressure of a big debut can go straight to a player's head instead of his feet. Gary Flitcroft had only been at his new club Blackburn for 4 days, and he spent even fewer minutes on the pitch before being sent off. And the same happened to Marco Boogers on his first appearance for West Ham. 4 days after his sending off against Manchester United, he was packed off to his native Holland. So when it all goes wrong, the ref sent you off and the crowd are on your back, at least you have your teammates for support. Well, maybe.
He must have got some stick this morning. I don't know if the culture in Spanish football is the same as in English football, but of course he's got Beckham there and others who probably given him a bit of good-hearted stick today about it.
Despite Woodgate's calamitous start, he'll take some consolation from the result. Luckily for him, Real Madrid went on to win the match 3-1. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Bit of breaking news about Iran and that country's nuclear ambitions. We're hearing that the European Union will formally submit a resolution to the IAEA, that's basically the United Nations nuclear watchdog, requiring Iran to be reported to the Security Council. This, of course, over fears that Iran is trying to develop nuclear weapons.
Let's bring an update then on Hurricane Rita, making its way ever slowly towards the coasts of Louisiana and Texas. We understand levees in New Orleans have now been breached, which is the worst fears coming true for many of the National Guardsmen who are still on standby. There's the picture, as you can see. It's about a 30-foot waterfall now that's coming through, breaching the levees and making one of the low-lying areas there flooded once again. But what about Hurricane Rita itself? The last time that two Category 4 hurricanes hit America was in 1915. Could it happen again? Rita is still Category 4, but the wind speed is dropping off slightly. It's 135 miles an hour. It's about 220 miles southeast of Galveston at the moment, moving at just 10 miles an hour.
Just give you an indication of some of the problems that are anticipated. Officials in Texas believe that as many as 6,000 homes could be destroyed by Rita. 5.2 million people will be affected by the hurricane, and Houston could be subject to 16 hours of hurricane strength winds. That's the kind of magnitude of storm we're talking about here.
President Bush is on his way. We'll be live to New Orleans and to Texas in just a couple of minutes.
Collect the soundtrack to your life.
You're unbelievable. Girls who are boys, who like boys, who be girls, who moving, just keep moving. I see. This is what
Sign up to broadband from BT from only $17.99 now and get 6 free downloads from iTunes.
Status Quo and Friends, a superb double album, free inside this weekend's Daily Mirror and Sunday Mirror. Hits from the world's best-loved rock band, including Whatever You Want, Down Down, rockin' all over the world, plus other legendary artists. Don't miss Status Quo and Friends, free only inside this weekend's Daily Mirror and Sunday Mirror.
The greatest mistake you can make is to underestimate your adversary. And they have underestimated us. They thought some punk could just smash through everything we built amongst the hair and scum. Destroy our homes, blast us out just like that. Well, I'm still here.
New fast-acting Domestos pipe-on blocker. Millions of germs will die.
Sorry, lassie. Someone else is going to have to save the village. I'm taking a break.
Is life passing you by? If you want more money and an exciting new career, call CompuTeach now to find out how you can learn IT skills that could change your life. There are so many IT jobs available now, and training with CompuTeach will really set you apart. You can study anywhere and anytime. You don't have to give up work, and you'll get industry-recognized qualifications employers really want. Get the job you really want, with more money, better prospects, better quality of life. Thousands have done it with CompuTeach, and so can you. Don't get left behind. Take a positive step and make it happen. Call CompuTeach now on 0800 657 657 or text Sky News to 64118 and change your life for good.
To be or not to be.
I want to express my feelings.
Rubbish. Artsworld Channel 157, now open for viewing.
Very good evening. Hurricane Rita still 17 hours from landfall, but she's already claimed her first victims. You're watching Sky News live from Houston, Texas. 24 elderly evacuees are killed as their bus catches fire on a gridlocked motorway. Say a prayer for Texas, the words of the governor, as more than 2 million people flee the region. Our worst fears come true. Engineers in New Orleans see water pouring over the city's damaged defences.
In other news tonight, airport alert. A man is arrested after breaching security at Manchester Airport.
Jailed for 15 years, the Muslim convert convicted of keeping terrorist material at home.
And dodgy debut. How Jonathan Woodgate had a night he'll never forget.
Sky News with Jeremy Thompson, Chris Roberts and Anna Botting.
Hurricane Rita is heading for us here in Texas along the Gulf coastline, and when she hits, the effects could be catastrophic. Long before she's even reached landfall, she's claimed her first victims. 24 elderly people being evacuated away from Houston from a care home here towards Dallas were caught up in a bus fire. It's believed that at least 24 died. There were 45 on board altogether, the first tragedy of this hurricane. And President Bush is on his way down here and says that at least 5 million people could be affected by this huge storm about to hit Texas and Louisiana. And Louisiana again in the path of the storm. New Orleans yet again seeing water gushing through its broken defences. The very latest now from Sky's Andrew Wilson.
Hurricane Rita claimed its first victims before making landfall when this bus carrying elderly evacuees burst into flames on a gridlocked highway, grinding 20 miles of traffic to a complete halt. For the 2 million or so people fleeing the Gulf Coast, a precautionary departure has turned into a nightmare.
If the hurricane comes in at a particular angle in a particular location, being on the highway is a death trap.
People are facing sudden, alarming choices over petrol.
Waiting here 2.5 hours. You hear that, people? 2.5 hours.
No bread, no water, no ice, no batteries.
And over supplies. Some have already given up and gone back home.
Frustration, exhaustion, and confusion.
But every family at home is another potential burden to the rescue services, so the police are still going house to house in Galveston and Port Arthur.
I hate it. We've been on radio and television encouraging people to leave, but there's going to be people that are going to stay and suffer the consequences, unfortunately.
Probably one of the strongest storms in this short period of time I've seen.
Now Rita has shifted slightly to the east. Better news for Galveston, worse for the Louisiana coast. New Orleans is already getting the first rain. Authorities there say it won't take many inches to breach again the hastily rebuilt sea defences around the city. And already in the 9th Ward, the levees are giving way and water is flooding back in. In New York, the traders are glued to the news updates as oil prices start to rise. With part of the industry still crippled by the last hurricane, the prospects for the 17 refineries on the Galveston coast are crucial.
I mean, if you look at Refinery Row, you know, they hit one end of Refinery Row, now the storms are going after the other. I mean, it's the worst possible nightmare scenario you could have for the world oil industry.
But this is serious work. Also in New York, the Red Cross and other agencies are gathering personnel and supplies ready to respond immediately. Nobody, particularly the federal authorities, wants a whisper of the miserable relief effort that followed Katrina.
We're looking for 45 truckloads of water, 45 truckloads of ice, and 25 truckloads of food. And we are well within our realm to get all of those on the ground and in place to make sure that they're ready to distribute.
We're still looking at a monster Category 4 storm. And in fact,
America is transfixed by this storm. Katrina battered this country's self-confidence. The prospect of Rita, so close on its heels, is creating a palpable sense of fear. Fear because the only certainty is that Rita is big, dangerous, and unavoidable. Andrew Wilson, Sky News in Washington.
So Rita's on her way towards Texas. Let's tell you the very latest that we know of her progress so far. She has been slightly downgraded from Category 5, the most powerful of all storms, to Category 4, but the wind's still at around 145 miles an hour out there in the Gulf of Mexico. And she's closing in on Texas across the Gulf. There's a major weather warning in place across the coastline. 20-foot storm surges could batter the shore in some areas. Bear in mind that Galveston Island is only around 8 foot above sea level. It doesn't bode well for towns like that. Texas officials expect 5.2 million people to be affected when the area bears the brunt of the storm, hitting landfall, we think, around 5 a.m. tomorrow morning local time. That's 11 in the morning in the UK. Rain's already started falling on New Orleans, water now flowing over the levees, raising fears of yet more flooding. A number of oil refineries and platforms out in the Gulf have been evacuated, and pretty much most of the oil production in this region has closed down for the moment. Refugee centers are being set up near Huntsville, San Antonio and Dallas, in safer parts of Texas. Forecasters expect the worst to be over by Tuesday as Rita tracks inland, losing energy as she goes. Well, there's been a slight change of course according to the hurricane watchers at the National Hurricane Center. They see a twitch to the north and to the east, and that means that Houston, where we are now, may be saved from the very worst of the storm, although they're still expecting 10 or 12 inches of rain in the next 24 hours and high winds that will batter this city. It's more likely now that the eye of the storm will be slightly to the north and the east of here, around the Port Arthur area. We're joined from there on the Gulf coastline by our correspondent David Bowden. David, tell us more.
Well, Jeremy, Rita is playing tricks on us right now because it appears dry and calm, and you would never know that there is a hurricane bearing down on us. But bearing down she is, and I'm told by the police chief here, Mark Blanton, that she should be here a lot quicker than we expected. When do you think we're going to get the real big rains and the storm surge here?
I suspect that we're going to get some in-between bands, some severe weather and some rapid tidal flooding. Hurricane force winds are expected in Galveston by 8, and so that means we're going to have impassable roads in the near future. The water level is going to rise very rapidly here because the tide's still trying to come in by astrological tide. And I
mean, basically you came down here to tell me, my colleagues here, to get out in the next couple of hours because you thought we were going to get stranded here. Why?
That's correct. The water level rises here through our drainage system. When the water backs up and can't go anywhere, it backs up into the city. And I don't want y'all to be trapped here trying to get out because you have to cross some of our drainage bayous.
And already some of the routes out of here, you say, have already been breached.
Part of our city is in a low-lying area called Sabine Pass. That highway is already underwater.
And what about the people who are refusing to go? There are a number of people here who say, no, we're going to sit this one out.
We've tried telling them over and over to leave, and some people will not believe. I don't care what they see on television, how dangerous this is. And we've told them that they should not expect to survive, and they still persist in staying.
You're telling people that if they stay, they're going to die?
I expect this city, if it lands in High Island, which is expected, we will receive the worst of this hurricane, and I expect that this city will be devastated.
The whole city gone as far as you're concerned?
Most of it, yes, sir.
So what are you guys going to do? You presumably have to get out too.
We will leave at the last minute. We're still trying to load 2 buses with people that we can talk into leaving. Some of them are seeing the weather a little bit and they're getting a little bit more cooperative. That is the last 2 buses, and after that, then there'll be no other way for us to get anyone out of here that does not have their own transportation.
So if you don't get on the bus, if you don't get in your car in the next 2 hours, that's it? You got to wait and see what happens?
If you don't get in the car in the next few hours, you could very well be trapped here and have to ride it out.
Thank you very much indeed, Chief Blanton there. So, Jeremy, whilst landfall may be many hours away, the storm surges that come in and around this hurricane, the intense rains mean that Port Arthur could get something in the next couple of hours that will force people out of this town, or could, as the Chief said just a minute or so ago, lead to them dying.
Sounds like a big decision ahead for you and all the others there in Port Arthur very shortly, David. Thanks very much for the update from Port Arthur. That's right up to the east of us here, right along the Gulf coastline. Around this huge city of Houston, where we're downtown at the moment, a city of some 4 million people. It's the fourth largest city in the United States, very much the center of the oil industry. A quarter of the country's oil production comes from this area, managed out of Houston, out along these Gulf Coast areas, the drilling platforms and the oil refineries here. A total population along this Texan coastline of some nearly 7 million people. Well, the authorities believe that 2.5 million have already evacuated to safer ground away from the low-lying areas. Much of this coastline is just a couple of feet above sea level and is almost certain to be inundated, whatever the size of this storm. But right here, of course, the big issue is trying to get hold of fuel. A great irony in the capital of fuel. People here trying to fill up, but these stations, as they're finding all these gas stations, completely empty and locked up. But there was a rumor a few hours ago that police have finally arrived. After something like 2 hours, the police have finally turned up to talk to people. We may get some sense out of them. Let's see if we can just trying to find out what's going on. Everybody here says that they heard a rumor or they heard the word on the local radio that this was one of the filling stations that was going to have a delivery from an oil tanker and that they better fill up their cars. And they've been waiting patiently here for a couple of hours now. This is the first sign of police, but there's absolutely nobody running the filling station. And Exxon, who manage it, say that they've evacuated all their staff. So at the moment, a lot of people here waiting on the basis of what appears to be no more than rumour and speculation, and that in a way sums up the atmosphere as we wait for this storm to hit. A lot of people very jumpy, very worried, want to fill up with gas so that they can get out of town and evacuate, or at least be home, hunkered down at home, knowing that they've got a full tank of petrol. To give you an idea of what's been going on and the whole evacuation plan around the city, my colleague Alex Rossi has been out and about to see the very latest on the streets of Houston.
96.5, if you're on the road, you see any gas stations open, please be happy to call us here. We'll get
After the exodus, it's the unlucky who are left behind. Cars litter the interstates out of Houston. Families who didn't have enough fuel to make it through the traffic jams. By the side of the road, we found Edna Christian and her 67-year-old mother, Charlemagne. They've been waiting for help for 24 hours after fleeing their home in the coastal town of Galveston.
Well, the difficult part is to sit here, not to get here because we made it here, but the traffic took 14 hours. Stop and go, stop and go.
You're stuck here now, and your mother's...
And we're stuck
and
here
you're sick.
now, right. And no help, no assistance from nobody.
Then never mind. You're not important if you're not on the phone.
I don't have, okay?
The emergency services are struggling to cope. So many evacuees need more fuel, but there's little sign it will come before the storm arrives.
After the gridlock in the interstates are once again running freely, hundreds of thousands of people have fled northwards, but many are still stranded. These motorists are waiting for fuel. Another delivery at this petrol station should arrive shortly. If it doesn't, they'll be stranded in Rita's path.
The Sanders family had to push their car for a mile after they ran out of petrol. Their home in New Orleans was destroyed by Katrina. They're now facing the prospect of Rita's destructive force.
In Texas, I just had managed to get an apartment, just about starting over again, and here comes Rita. We have to evacuate again. With little to no money, little to no direction, because we're new residents of Houston, that's not Dallas.
Doesn't start. You said.
And with fuel in such short supply, there's panic and frustration at the pumps as motorists wait in line for petrol that may never come.
We came from Galveston. We left at, 6? On Wednesday. This is how far we've gotten. Now I don't have any gas and the car won't start.
I have a family, I have little kids with me, and I have nowhere to go. I wish I would have never left the place. I should have stayed where I was.
I appreciate the severity of this situation, and it is a desperate situation. My car probably may not even start the next time I try to start it. I'm just in this line hoping we can get some gas.
All the cops watch.
You don't want to do nothing, just stand in there.
The federal response team says it is sending tankers of fuel to help the stranded. Time, though, is running out. Rita is coming. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Houston.
Well, the very latest here from the forecourt of this downtown Houston filling station is that the police have finally arrived and told people that there's not going to be any petrol here today. The rumours that have gone round on local radio stations that have got all these people here in huge numbers, they're queuing about half a mile down the block from here to try and fill up. They've just been told no petrol today. Same story right across the area. It seems nobody seems to better fill up their cars and their 4x4s, their SUVs. They're all having to rely on the whatever's in their tank and whatever they've managed to put up in jerry cans in the days leading up to this storm. Well, whilst we watch the disappointed customers all disappearing from here, let's get Ross Fredenberg on the line. Fredenberg's from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. He's up in the state capital, Austin, Texas, joining me on the line. Ross, good to talk to you. Maybe you can fill us in a little bit more about this situation with people who want to know about getting fuel for their vehicles.
Well, we've been in touch with the Governor's Division of Emergency Management, which is overseeing the evacuations, and I know they've been making every effort with the National Guard and others to help supply gas to the people who are trying to get out of Rita's disastrous threat. So we are very concerned about the situation and basically ready to jump in as soon as the coast is clear after the hurricane goes through. We have all the federal assets here at our ready. All the federal agencies as well as the Department of Defense are ready to provide whatever's needed. We have stockpiled water and ice and the basic needs and are there in San Antonio and Fort Worth out of the danger for the moment, and within hours after the hurricane goes through, we'll start distributing that.
My understanding is at the moment it's not a full state of emergency. You've instituted evacuation orders, and they seem to have been followed pretty successfully by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people leaving the low-lying areas along the Texas coastline.
Yes, and we're certainly glad that people are getting out. It's a serious storm that we want everybody to take very seriously, and as I say, it's the governor's responsibility to implement the evacuations. We're ready to come in and supply the needs as they arise after the storm comes through. And of course, we are supplementing as much as we can the efforts of the governor's Division of Emergency Management.
Does it need a full state of emergency to be declared by the governor or the president for the whole operation to sweep into place, or is everything ready to go and it will roll in as soon as the storm subsides?
Well, the way the emergency management system works here, the federal government comes in whenever the state's needs are surpassed. So we're here ready to support the state, and it won't be a matter of paperwork stopping us. We'll be in there as soon as the hurricane goes through, and getting in there as soon as possible to support the people's needs.
And Ross, what's your latest assessment of just how serious the storm will be and the extent of the potential damage?
It's very hard to say. It's a very serious Category 4 hurricane, and it's just a matter of how far it goes inland. And we're especially concerned about the amount of rainfall that it causes, and that can cause serious flooding in even the most inland areas.
Ross Fredenberg from the Federal Emergency Management Agency talking to us on the line from Austin, Texas. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for the latest information. Here, yet another garage forecourt clearing with no satisfied customers. There is simply no oil in the oil capital of the United States today as people try to fill up their vehicles to get out of town, try to prepare for the emergency that lies ahead in the night that lies before us. Hurricane Rita expected to strike landfall around 4 or 5 tomorrow morning along the Gulf coastline, somewhere to the east of Houston, the 4th largest city in the United States. The whole area bracing itself for this massive storm. Nobody knows quite what's likely to come. High winds and rain are absolutely guaranteed. More from Houston and Texas in a short while. Meantime, let's catch up with the rest of the news from Sky News Center.
Jeremy, thanks very much indeed. Our top stories, in fact, and that is our top story, that Texas officials say more than 5 million people could be affected by Hurricane Rita. 24 elderly evacuees died in Dallas after a fire on their bus as they tried to flee the storm. In New Orleans, water has already breached at least one of the levees, flooding part of the city. This are live pictures you can see. The breach in the levee there causing something like a waterfall into one of the neighbourhoods, the 9th Ward neighbourhood, causing flooding there already.
Here, police have used a taser gun to arrest a man after he broke into a secure area at Manchester Airport. Officers were called in after the man forced his way past security on the airfield perimeter.
And a British Muslim convert has been jailed for 15 years after being convicted of possessing terrorist items. Andrew Rowe was found guilty of having instructions on how to fire mortar bombs and notes written in a secret code.
Headlines and 7 other screens can be found on Sky News Active. All of those screens available in full size if you like. Just push the red button on your remote control.
Sportsline on Sky News, sponsored by The Sun.
Hello there. Great Britain have had a bad opening day to their Davis Cup World Group qualifier against Switzerland. Alan Mackin picked up just 2 games as he was thrashed by the world number 1 Roger Federer, whilst Andy Murray was also beaten in straight sets. It's not looking good, you know. Britain must now win all 3 of the weekend's remaining rubbers if they're to take Switzerland's place amongst the world's top 16 nations.
This was the Jeremy Bates plan: write off the 2 rubbers against Federer and win the other 3. That made Alan Mackin the sacrificial lamb, and slaughter duly followed. 262 places split Mackin and the world number 1, but light years separated the 2 men only a few yards apart across the net. For Mackin, it was a major triumph, just winning a couple of games in the 3rd. The result was beyond doubt. It took only an hour and a quarter and had the cowbells clanging early. With Rosetsky rested, the gamble relied on Andrew Murray levelling the tie. He had his chance in a second set tiebreak to level the match at 1-1 with some inspired tennis. But Stanislas Wawrinka, ranked well ahead of the teenager in the world, dished out a lesson in holding your nerve to go 2 sets up. Murray, in his first Davis Cup singles, led early in the 3rd, but again surrendered the advantage. The Swiss rolled on to victory, and that should now become a formality with Federer still to play his second singles. Chris Scudder, Sky News.
Manchester United's injury troubles go from bad to worse. Gary Neville has been ruled out for 6 weeks after having an operation on the groin he injured last month. He joins Roy Keane and Gabriel Ainsay on the injury list. On day 2 of the Seve Trophy, the Great Britain and Ireland team have hit back after trailing the Europeans 4-1 yesterday. Captain Colin Montgomery kept faith with the pairings that let him down yesterday, and they came good in today's 4 balls. Paul Casey and David Howe won their match against Miguel Angel Jimenez and Jose Maria Olazabal 5-4. Also victorious with the Irish pairing of Paul McGinley and Padraig Harrington. They beat Nicholas Fast and Peter Hansen 2-1 to take the match to 4-3 overall. And that was soon followed by a win for Ian Poulter and Nick Doherty to tie the match at 4-all. Team Europe edged back in front though, thanks to a victory for Thomas Bjorn and Henrik Stenson. They beat Colin Montgomery and Graham McDowell to go 5-4 up, and the final match was won by Martin Lefebvre and Manuel Canonica to leave the score at 6-4 going into day 3. The Super League playoffs get underway tonight. Very important match this. Bradford taking on the London Broncos at Odsal in the first elimination match. The winners will meet Warrington or Hull next weekend in the second round. The losers are out.
There are very few survivors from the very first Super League playoff match back in 1998, but the Bradford club captain is one of them. And 7 years and 13 post-season games later, he's ready to do it all again.
Most of them have been good, some of them have been bad. Been knocked out in some of the things, but other ones we've gone on to the grand final, get in there, had some success there and had some losses there. So I guess it's an achievement, but it's not one that you really put much stock in or very aware of.
No one has played in more grand finals than Robbie Paul, 5 in total, and the way the Bulls finished the regular season with 8 straight wins, a 6th is definitely on the cards.
We want to get to the grand final, we want to have some success there. Second place really isn't an option for us, but the reality is as well, there's 5 other teams in this race and they're all real good, stacked with great players with great potential, and it's got, our work's cut out for us.
Despite having 1 year left on his current contract, this could be Paul's final season at Bradford. He's been strongly linked with a move to Huddersfield, and if he does leave after over a decade at Odsal, it would be fitting to go out on a high with another Bulls trophy win.
There's the expectation of our fans, expectation of the club's directors. It comes all the way from the top and sinks all the way through. You've got a core bunch of players here that have been here and been in successful teams over a number of years, so they kind of know how to win.
And not many in Super League know how to win quite as often as Robbie Paul. Rod Studd, Sky News.
Championship leader Fernando Alonso was third fastest in the first free practice for this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix. Alonso needs to finish third to become the youngest ever world champion. McLaren test driver Alex Wurz posted the fastest time. Takuma Sato was second fastest. Now, the teams are practicing at Brands Hatch for the first A1 Grand Prix. Qualifying is tomorrow with the race on Sunday. It's a new concept where the teams compete as nations rather than individual manufacturers. And unlike Formula 1, the drivers all race in exactly the same type of car, making skill and tactics of the teams the key factors. There's also 2 races at the meeting as well, a short sprint race followed by a longer feature race of 150 miles.
Just coming in this morning, seeing all the people outside already on a Friday morning, I mean, this is going to be big.
It is going to be big. The grandstands aren't full yet, but apparently for Sunday all the grandstand tickets are completely sold out, and it is going to be a big series.
And for those of us who don't know the car behind you, just explain maybe how different it is to an F1 car.
All the chassis along the pit lane are all the same. Everybody's given the same engine, same chassis, same tyres, and it's just down to the teams to set it up. There'll be different setups, and then down to the driver to get the best out of the car.
That's it from Sportsline.
The sun, we love it.
Still to come here on Sky News, looking to the future, will global warming bring further fierce storms to the Gulf states?
And bushfighters, the Kalahari warriors, desperately trying to save their land.
You can now get a free Sky Plus box. Here's how. Introduce a friend to Sky. Ask them to ring this number and join Sky TV. 08702 404 004. They'll get free equipment and free installation. And here's the big plus. We'll thank you with a free Sky Plus box when you introduce a friend.
You've been waiting too long. Just when you thought you could go on forever, your mind unwinds and your world keeps spinning round. You've been waiting too long, and your world keeps spinning round. You've been waiting too long.
The new Citroën C4, alive with technology. From 9,595 and now with typical 0% APR with 35% deposit. Citroën, pushing value to the limit.
Where's the phone charger?
In the glove box.
What are these?
Sweetheart, I've never seen them before in my life, honestly.
Well, it's your car!
Sweetheart, I don't know where they came from.
You're not going to be sleeping with me tonight!
Now Lenore makes bedtime feel so good, you'll never want to share your bed again. New Lenore Sleep Sensations with extracts of lavender and chamomile.
At Jordan's, we farm our cereals in a way that reverses the decline of British wildlife. We believe that great tasting food comes from working closely with nature. Back to nature, Jordan's.
The weather, in association with Qatar Airways, your 5-star airline.
Hello there. Well, in comparison to what's happening over in the Atlantic with Hurricane Rita, things are relatively calm for Europe. There are a few showers around. Some were found through Iberia today. This is this area of cloud here. And then out to the east, this rash of clouds just doesn't seem to be going anywhere. It's been there for quite a few days now. Now for us, we've got this bit of cloud here. It's bringing some rain, has done throughout the day, now moving away. But then there's this band, which is going to head in later on. So all the time we're getting bands of rain pushing in from the Atlantic, some of them remnants of previous hurricanes. If we take a look at the forecast across Europe, you'll be able to see how things pan out tomorrow afternoon. So there's our next band of rain working its way in across Ireland. So we've got rid of one, which has turned into cloud really, pushed its way out through central parts of Europe, some showers around, and then those showers still lingering down in the southeast corner. But through central, northeastern and southwestern areas, plenty of sunshine around and temperatures pretty good if you're down through Spain and Portugal, some of them getting as high as maybe 30 degrees. Now this evening for us, things actually are going to end up pretty much fine and dry through the evening, so most of that rain has gone. However, it's making way for a very cold night, very chilly night. You'll really feel it first thing tomorrow morning. A bit of frost, ground frost, particularly through central and eastern areas. Now that makes way for a fine and dry day again, so Saturday's looking good if you're in Scotland, England or Wales, but there's this area of rain which is going to take over Ireland throughout the day, taking over the whole of Ireland, working its way eastwards, and it will work its way into the rest of mainland Britain later on.
The weather, in association with Qatar Airways, your 5-star airline.
You're watching Sky News. These are this evening's top stories. Officials in Texas say more than 5 million people could be affected by Hurricane Rita. 24 elderly evacuees died in Dallas earlier today after a fire on their bus as they tried to escape the storm. In New Orleans, meanwhile, these are live pictures coming to us. Water has already breached at least one of the levees, flooding part of the city once again.
Well, back here now, and police have used a taser gun to arrest a man after he broke into a secure area at Manchester Airport. Officials were called in after the man forced his way past security on the airfield perimeter.
And a British Muslim convert has been jailed for 15 years after being convicted of possessing terrorist items. Andrew Rowe was found guilty of having instructions on how to fire mortar bombs and also notes written in a secret code.
Well, back here in Houston, crowds of people around us here who all came down to see if there was any gas at the local gas filling station. The news is not being good, nothing to fill the car up with. Jessica joins me with Raphael and Paul. Jessica, how much of a blow was that not being able to fill your car up?
Very much big blow. I've been here since 9 o'clock actually. We heard it on the news and we've been here since 9, then to turn out we get no gas at all. So I guess we're just stuck till, you know.
We still have to evacuate.
You know.
Are you trying to get out of town?
Yeah, we try to get out of town. It's supposed to be hitting tomorrow morning, so yeah, I don't want to be through this. I've never been through one, don't want to be through one at all.
Are you getting a bit scared at the thought of this hurricane?
Somewhat, yeah. Somewhat, yeah.
Katrina in New Orleans, yeah.
You know, and this is a 4, that was a 3. I mean, that's just not good.
To be worse than the last one.
We're just getting some motorbike action, some easy riders heading out of town as well. Raphael, you're saying Katrina shook you up a bit, did it?
Yeah, when you look at it, most people evacuate since they saw what happened to Katrina in New Orleans. If it wouldn't be for that, then people, they wouldn't be worried. Like you have some folks from Galveston, they say they won't move. They've been to a couple hurricanes, so they get used to it. But people are real scared because of what they saw on the news a couple of weeks ago, what happened in New Orleans. So.
Jessica, where were you hoping to go to? Had you got an evacuation plan?
Yeah, I was planning to go either down to Dallas. If not to Dallas, we're going down Katy. Where are we going to? Bryan, Texas. Where the rain won't be hitting. You know, we'll get a little bit of rain, but I don't want my car.
So no fuel? You're stuck here?
I mean, we got fuel enough to make it to the house, but I mean, yeah, we stuck in Houston basically.
Stuck in Houston. Well, 3 guys who've decided to stay, Michael, Jonathan and Lachlan, are all Scottish fellas, all working in the oil industry here. You've sent your other halves away, I gather.
That's correct, yes. They're away in New York at the moment, and Michael's fiance, she's actually in Scotland right now.
So, yeah, we're sticking out.
We gassed up earlier on in the week, so got enough food, full tank of gas.
I think the major worry is without power for maybe 2-3 days.
Yeah, that.
And I think the worst thing would be for the women to be here and for them not to have their home comforts. Would be.
But you've not lived through a storm like this before.
Not something to this scale, But I think everyone, obviously people are taking the necessary precautions to, get out the way of the storm. But I think you just got to an experience. You go through it, live through it.
Hopefully it's not going to be as bad as kind of first expected.
Obviously New Orleans was a situation.
I was going to say, I mean, you took a look at Katrina, and you must have thought this is not something I really want to experience.
However, that was below sea level, and we shouldn't get that same kind of flooding conditions. I think the wind's going to be a huge factor, but as far as flooding goes, I don't think we're going to be as badly damaged as New Orleans did see a couple of weeks back.
So, Michael, you're hunkered down. You've got enough food and water and beer, and
we've got beer. We'll be all right.
Actually, we're looking for some more ice right now. So that's about it. But there's about 5 or 6 of us. We're all going up to one house, and
we'll hunker down. It'll be like a windy day in Shetland.
Oh, you want to believe it, eh? So I think Shetland might seem quite calm and mild in comparison.
Yes. I think it will do.
We've got the video camera organised so we can take the story anyway. So.
Well, maybe that's the best plan, you guys, is to join them for a party if you can't get out of town.
And we'll be there
Let's say thanks to everybody here, and hope you stay safe and well and get out of town if you can. And
good luck to everybody.
Yes, good luck to everybody. Of course, New Orleans has been through it once and looks like it's already catching it again. The latest pictures we have from there show that the levees which were being rebuilt have already been breached, and the city has become inundated again. We'll have more from Houston and more from New Orleans right after this.
All-new Saab 9.3 V6 Turbo Sport Wagon.
It's me again, Mr. Mouse. Permit me to show you around my humble residence. As you can see, there's a lot of valuable stuff here. Antique cheddar, genuine Wensleydale. It's a big worry. If only they'd insure the place with esure.com. With the hefty 30% discount for insuring buildings and contents online, they'd be amazed at how much money they could save. But they never seem to get round to it. What if there was a fire? I'd be up to my knees in Welsh rarebit. esure.com. Home insurance at nicest prices. Come on, give us a click.
They say New Yorkers can be demanding. But if an expectation that things be done quickly and to a certain level of perfection is demanding, well then yeah, we're demanding.
You can't drive it, park it.
He's a pussycat, really. We just have a highly developed sense of what we want out of life.
You're flying American, right?
Absolutely.
We've flown more New Yorkers to destinations around the world than any other airline. And if we can keep them happy.
Twining's everyday tea. Do you know, I wouldn't be ashamed to give that to my builder.
The return of the Reds! The glory days are back!
Now, Chelsea are back at Anfield.
That might win across the line!
To face the European champions. Liverpool v Chelsea, The Return, is live only on Sky Sports.
Fasten your seatbelts!
The UEFA Champions League continues. 14 live matches on Sky Sports 2 and Extra, including Inter-Rangers, plus the big one. Liverpool v Chelsea, live only on Sky Sports.
Well, although she has lost some of her destructive force, Rita is already the third most powerful storm ever recorded in the North Atlantic.
At her peak, she was classified as a Category 5 hurricane. The only other storm to reach the same level this year was Hurricane Katrina. Some experts blame the ferocity of the storms on global warming and say this is just the beginning.
Is nature taking its course, or is human nature the cause of raging changes to the weather? Before Rita, there was Katrina. This season there have been 17 named storms. That's not unusual. What is how intense those storms have become. Over the last 3 decades, the biggest hurricanes, cyclones and typhoons have got stronger, gaining momentum from warmer seas. Which is why some scientists put it down to global warming.
We certainly know from our models that under a warming world you would expect to see more powerful hurricanes more often, and that's what we can see in the future. These sorts of events, Rita and Katrina, happening more often.
But it suits George W. to cast doubts on claims that global warming is a real phenomenon, because that would require major changes to the way oil-rich America does business. And history is on their side. Atlantic hurricanes follow decades-long cycles. The seasons were particularly intense between the 1940s and the 1960s. Then they went through a relatively mild stage until 1994, picking up strength again from 1995. Some experts say this phase could last another 10 to 20 years, which means southern states of America may suffer more of the same until 2015. The debate is almost as cyclical as the weather systems everyone's trying to understand, which leaves the United States with a choice. They could either signal willing to cut greenhouse gases at the global climate talks in November, or ride out the storms. Juliet Errington, Sky News.
Now, they're the last remnants of the hunter-gatherers that once roamed the African plains, but the Bushmen of the Kalahari are now under threat.
They're having to make a final stand against a government that wants them removed from their ancestral lands. Sky's David Chater reports now from Botswana.
These are the Bushmen the tourists see in Botswana, acting the hunter-gatherers searching the Kalahari for food, herbs and water. They're paid to mimic a lifestyle most of them have already lost, displaying skills that have failed to ensure their survival in a modern world that's proved far harsher than their desert homeland.
The Bushmen could once be numbered in their millions. Now there are only 100,000 of them left in southern Africa, half of those here in Botswana. But only 240 of them are left in their traditional homeland in the central Kalahari Game Reserve. And they're now making a last stand against attempts to evict them.
These men were arrested on the reserve earlier this week. They told me the police and wildlife wardens were firing rifles over their heads throughout the night, preventing them from searching for food and water. The situation is now desperate.
I'm sure that people are going to die soon of what is happening.
The thousands already evicted have been put in resettlement camps. They have schools, running water and food trucked in by the government. But this is an alien environment that has robbed them of their dignity. HIV, AIDS and prostitution is now rife. And men pass along idle hours in self-destructive drinking bouts. In their culture, if they cannot kill game, they are not men.
If they shoot whatever you want, they can shoot us. That's no problem. I can die, no problem. No problem, because this is my country.
And the life is difficult because people are not used to living the way they are living now.
The elders can see with their own eyes what is happening around them. Calls for protest are growing, and demands to go to the aid of those still holding out in the reserve.
They don't have access to water, they are not allowed to do any hunting, they've got nothing to eat. So they are been made in a very bad situation. That is a punishment, in which, to my knowledge, which I see the government is doing, so that people have to give up and go outside the camps.
It seems the sun is about to set on an ancient way of life in the Kalahari. The Bushmen's dances and rituals will only lose their power if they lose their land. They've been bankrupted fighting for it in the courts. Now they're appealing to the world. The Kalahari will soon be left to diamond prospectors and big game tourists. After 30,000 years, its most fascinating, intriguing and intelligent species will have been driven from here by gunpoint. David Chater, Sky News, the Kalahari Desert.
You're watching Sky News. These are the top stories this evening. Texas officials say more than 5 million people could be affected by Hurricane Rita. 24 elderly evacuees died earlier today in Dallas after a fire on their bus as they tried to escape the storm. In New Orleans, these are live pictures coming to us now. Water has already breached at least one of the levees, flooding part of the city once again.
Well, back here in other news, police have used a taser gun to arrest a man after he broke into a secure area at Manchester Airport. Officers were called in after the man forced his way past security on the airfield perimeter.
And a British Muslim convert has been jailed for 15 years after being convicted of possessing terrorist items. Andrew Rowe was found guilty of having instructions on how to fire mortar bombs and also notes that were written in a secret code.
Don't forget about Sky News Active. Have the very latest on New Orleans and Texas as well. Just down the road, it's those two states, Louisiana and Texas, which are going to bear the brunt of Hurricane Rita. We'll keep you abreast of that throughout the night hours as the hurricane approaches landfall.
Now, the widow of the King's Cross suicide bomber says her husband's mind was poisoned by visits to radical mosques.
Speaking publicly for the first time, Samantha Luthwaite said the trips transformed Jermaine Lindsay from a peaceful man into someone she didn't recognise.
Bomber's widow Samantha Luthwaite cradles her newborn daughter Rukiah. She was 8 months pregnant on the day her husband Jermaine Lindsay carried out a suicide attack on rush hour commuters. Of the 4 bombers, he was the deadliest. The Jamaican-born 19-year-old, who took the name Jamal after converting to Islam, killed 26 people at Russell Square. In an interview with a national newspaper, Samantha says the Jamal she met and married was a man of peace. How these people could have turned him and poisoned his mind is dreadful. Jamal is accountable for his actions 100%, and I condemn with all my heart what he has done. I will try to remember for my children's sake the Jamal that I loved, but the day will come when I have to tell them what he did. According to Lindsay's wife, he would often vanish from the couple's rented home here on Northern Road in Aylesbury for days on end. She never suspected he was a fanatic and says she's one of his victims too.
I think she should get on with her life, that's right. Can't blame everybody else for what he did, can you?
She's a human being in the end of the day, isn't she? And she's only responsible for her own actions.
I think they should forgive, but not to forget, but to forgive. And just let her get on with her life and her kids.
Community leaders in the Buckinghamshire market town definitely want to forget Lindsay.
Actually, we're very upset what Jermaine Lindsay has done. It's horrific. But I think it's time that we, people in Aylesbury, move on.
Samantha Luthwaite says she worries about her family's safety and hopes people will understand that she had nothing to do with her husband's actions. Enda Brady, Sky News.
Stay with us here on Sky News. Still to come this evening, footy farce, Woodgate's dodgy debut for Real Madrid.
Labelled for their look.
Hoodie is totally associated now with, if not violence, then at least criminality.
Feared by their communities.
What did you like about wearing a hoodie? Is it so that if you get in trouble, no one can see your face?
A faceless menace or harmless teenage fashion.
When I'm in my hood, I do not feel like a thug.
Join Piers Morgan as he confronts the stereotype of hoodies.
Menacing, intimidating.
Hoodies, Sunday at 10, Sky 1.
Agile. Don't see that very often. The new Skoda Octavia 4x4.
Hi, I'm interested in this L4012 laptop. I've seen it on your website.
Latest Packard Bell with Intel Centrino mobile technology, so you've got an internet connection wherever you are. And at our lowest ever price, 499.
Here, have a play.
Intel Centrino mobile technology for just 499.
Over half our customers visit our website before they visit our store.
And how long will the wait be?
Oh, about this long.
Great.
Enjoy the best of both worlds. Visit PC World online and in store.
PC World. Free inside tomorrow's Daily Express. Start your Legends double CD. Then complete the set with Volume 2. Free inside this Sunday's Sunday Express. Express delivery.
Incredibly, 1 million of us could have diabetes and not even know it. Symptoms like needing the loo more often or just feeling tired are easy to miss. But spot diabetes early enough and it's easier for your doctor to treat. That's why Lloyd's Pharmacy offers free diabetes tests. Thank you. To everyone. Lloyd's Pharmacy, your local health authority.
Most of us are asleep most of the time. Even when we shop, we're sleep shopping. Filling your trolleys with exactly the same things, week in, week out. There's 1 million meals to choose from, so why eat the same ones again and again? Remember the first time you ever tasted honey? Wouldn't it be great to taste something new for the first time every week? Use your imagination. Use my imagination. Use their imagination. Be adventurous! We're not talking rocket science. Next time you go to Sainsbury's, buy a nutmeg, grate it over your bolognese. See how easy it is? Go on, try something new today.
Yeah, look away for this one. After 18 months of injury problems, Jonathan Woodgate's first game for the world's most glamorous football club was always going to be memorable.
Well, the defender certainly didn't disappoint, providing Real Madrid fans with a game they'll never forget. Unfortunately for him, it was for all the wrong reasons. Sky's Ashish Joshi reports.
It's a goal any striker in the world would love to score. But the problem is Jonathan Woodgate's a defender and he's just put the ball in the back of his own net. And it got worse. What should have been a dream debut for the Real Madrid player soon turned into a nightmare. After spending just 65 minutes on the pitch, the former Newcastle man was sent off. Not quite the sort of introduction you'd want after spending 17 months out of the team with a thigh injury.
It was a tremendous header, there's no question about that. I mean, you know, if he tried to do that, 99 times out of 100 he couldn't.
But football's full of farcical fables. Southampton manager Graham Souness was conned into signing a player he thought was a cousin of Liberian legend George Weah. But after sending out the untried and certainly not tested Ali Deer for his debut against Leeds, Souness soon realised the player wasn't going to win the Golden Boot with his feet of clay. Deer was substituted after just 10 minutes, and Weah had never heard of his imposter cousin, and nobody else has since. But often it's not the manager's fault. The pressure of a big debut can go straight to a player's head instead of his feet. Gary Flitcroft had only been at his new club Blackburn for 4 days, and he spent even fewer minutes on the pitch before being sent off. And the same happened to Marco Boogers on his first appearance for West Ham. 4 days after his sending off against Manchester United, he was packed off to his native Holland. So when it all goes wrong, the ref sends you off and the crowd are on your back, at least you have your teammates for support. Well, maybe.
He must have got some stick this morning. I don't know if the culture in Spanish football is the same as in English football, but of course he's got Beckham there and others who probably given him a bit of good-hearted stick today about it.
Despite Woodgate's calamitous start, he'll take some consolation from the result. Luckily for him, Real Madrid went on to win the match 3-1. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
Rob Cullings here with the rest of the sport. And it wasn't like he was cheap or anything for Real Madrid, was
No,
it?
we're not particularly cheap, and there we are. But he scores goals, which is great. But in the wrong,
the wrong end.
Yeah, which is a bit of a shame for them, and rotten luck for him. I think he was a little bit unlucky. Not great debuts for one of our tennis players either, Andy Murray. Great Britain have had a bad opening day to their Davis Cup World Group qualifier against Switzerland. Alan Mackin picked up just 2 games as he was thrashed by world number 1 Roger Federer, whilst Andy Murray, making his debut in the Davis Cup, was also beaten in straight sets. Manchester United's injury troubles go from bad to worse, with Gary Neville ruled out for 6 weeks after having a groin operation. He joins Roy Keane and Gabriel Ainzer on the injured list. On day 2 of the Seve Trophy, the Great Britain and Ireland team have clawed their way back into the match after a 4-1 deficit to the Europeans on the opening day. They won 3 of this afternoon's 5 matches to level the competition at 4-all, but Europe won the last 2 matches of the day to make it 6-4 going into day 3. Championship leader Fernando Alonso was 3rd fastest in the first free practice for this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix. Alonso needs to finish only 3rd to become the youngest ever world champion. And McLaren test driver Alex Wurz posted the fastest time. Takuma Sato was 2nd fastest. That's all the sport for now. We'll have more in full in about half an hour.
Rob, thanks very much indeed. As predicted, Hurricane Rita has been downgraded to a Category 3 hurricane. That means the wind speeds have dropped below 130 miles per hour. It's been steadily going down from about 145 this morning to 135 about an hour or so ago. Level 3 means anywhere between 111 to 130 miles per hour, so it still packs a punch.
Unbelievable. I mean, the predictions earlier in Texas alone were that 6,000 homes were going to be destroyed over the next 48 hours. 5 million people have been affected by Rita, and Houston in Texas could face 16 hours of hurricane force winds, so there are still going to be major problems.
Yeah, southeast Texas is expected to get hurricane force winds for 16 straight hours. The problem with Rita is she's moving very slowly, and the levees, as you can see, broken in New Orleans already, so flooding happening there once again. We'll get the very latest at the top of the hour.
No one really knows what's going to happen in the future, and I don't like surprises. That's why I do like inflation-beating savings. They're guaranteed to grow ahead of inflation whatever happens. They're tax-free, no risk, and I believe in them. That's why my fee for this ad is going to Great Ormond Street.
To invest in inflation-beating savings, call free on 0500 500 000.
Up to a £5,000 golden hello. And you get to hang out with Kareem. Use your head. Teach.
Last week, we put ordinary cistern blocks into all these loos, except one, where there's new Harpic in-cistern 2-in-1. It's the first cistern block with a unique continuous fragrancing gel. For non-stop fragrance on top of unbeatable cleaning.
When you enjoy life, you want to enjoy it to the full. And Optical Express Laser Vision Correction helps you do exactly that, from only £395 per eye. Optical Express, one of Europe's leading eye care specialists, provide only qualified, experienced ophthalmic surgeons with a combined experience of over 100,000 procedures carried out worldwide. Expert aftercare is included in the price, and interest-free credit is available. For your free information pack or to arrange a free consultation, just call Optical Express today on 08702 20 20 20 for laser vision correction from only £395 per eye. Optical Express. Eye care, we care.
Sorry! Jake! Well, first my mum did the Actimel challenge. Then she told my dad about it, and he started doing it. And now, she's telling all her friends about it.
71% of people who took the Actimel challenge said they would recommend it. Try it every day for 2 weeks and see if you feel the difference.
Collect vouchers at Tesco, and your school or club can get new sports equipment. Not to mention the very best coaching. And if they're really lucky, they could win some very expensive trainers for the afternoon. Tesco. Every little helps.
The Saturday night premiere in association with Panasonic.
Jason Bourne is a hard man to find, but with Sky Movies Multi-Start he's easy to catch. Apply the remote control, access Sky Movies 3, activate the red button, and choose from 8 different start times, one every 15 minutes, all in one night.
This is Jason Bourne. Where is he? Right next to you.
Matt Damon, The Bourne Supremacy, premieres tomorrow at 8 on Sky Movies 1, and then every 15 minutes via the red button on Sky Movies 3.
Good evening. Hurricane Rita is 16 hours from landfall, but she's already claimed her first victims. You're watching Sky News live from Houston, Texas. 24 elderly evacuees are killed as their bus catches fire on a gridlocked motorway. Say a prayer for Texas, the words of the governor, as more than 2 million people flee the region. Our worst fears come true. Engineers in New Orleans see water pouring over the city's defences again.
In other news, airport alert. A man is arrested after